Hello everyone, this is Lala and I recently made a video recapping and analyzing the Cap family, which includes all of their ancestors to their current members after I got rid of all my Veronaville content, and now I am redoing that with the Monty family. I'm not going to waste much time. I'm going to talk about what we know of the ancestors and go in chronological order before we get to the living, relevant Monty members. Let's just get right to it. So, in the CAP video, I mentioned how there are 8 founding families, and I talked about 4 of them on the CAP video, and the remaining 4 are on the Monty family, clearly. So, I'm going to start with Generation 1, which is a part of that original 8. We are going to start off with the first branch, which is the Monty family, i.e., Patrizio's grandparents, and this is like the purest Monty timeline. And the two people here are Bassanio Monty and Portia Monty, and they're both family Sims, meaning that they were very compatible, and you can clearly see how the family aspiration was passed on from them to their grandson and their great granddaughter. Anyways, since they are the first people on the Monty timeline, I predict that they migrated from somewhere else to Veronaville to be a part of the settler Veronaville citizens. And based on their last names, I assume they come from either Italy or a place that was colonized by Italy within the 19th century and the early 20th century. So somewhere like a Somalia or a Libya. But that's kind of like a headcanon thing, or a possible explanation. Now we are going to move on to the second of the founding 4 families of the Monty branch, and this set would be the first who would marry into the Montys within the second generation. And that is the Capitano family. So this family, or this branch, consists of Angelo Capitano, who was a fortune sim in his life, and Mariana Capitano, who was a popularity sim during her lifetime, and these two aspirations are compatible. So I'd assume that this couple were compatible too. So they could either be from Italy themselves or from an area that had Italian colonization. So a la Pied Noir, Algeria. Maybe. Now we're moving on to the second branch of the original 4 families of what would become the Monty family. And this is through Isabella Monty's branch, and that is the Pantalone family. And the two people who are her paternal grandparents are Proteus Pantalone and Julia Pantalone. Proteus Pantalone was a knowledge sim in his life, and Julia Pantalone was a family sim throughout her life. And those two aspirations tend to go very well together and generally seem to be hand in hand. So they're probably from Italy or yet again another place where there was a lot of migration from Italy to Northern Africa. So that's just an assumption there. The second branch of Isabella's grandparents and the fourth founding family of what would become a part of the Monty lineage, and the final set of Generation 1 is the Zani family, and this consists of Lucio Zani and Overdone Zani, and they are both knowledge sims, which are very, very compatible, and I also assume that they are also from Italy, though some of their skin colors and features might suggest other ancestry as well. So that's pretty much it for Generation 1 within this family lineage. Now we are going to move on to the second generation of what would become the long Monty line, and these are the firstborn people in Veronaville from this long family and from the original 8 families and the 4 original families from this long Monty branch. So I'm going to be talking about essentially Patrizio and Isabella's parents here. The first 2 people that I'm going to talk about is the second generation of the Monty branch, i.e. Valentine Monty and Sylvia Monty. Valentine Monty is the son of Bassanio and Portia Monty, and Sylvia Monty is the daughter of Angelo and Mariana Capitano. And obviously, they are Patrizio's parents. But looking at their aspirations, they aren't compatible at all. Valentine Monty is a romance sim, and Sylvia Monty is a knowledge sim. And those two aspirations do not go well together whatsoever. So part of me is kind of wondering if they're in some sort of an arranged / lavender / open marriage, since they never divorced. Despite this, and they seemed stable enough on the surface, but obviously they both passed away as adults, which is what happened with the Cap offsprings within their generation as well. And then the last two from this generation, i.e., being the firstborn of Veronaville Sims and a part of Generation 2, are Vicentino and Francesca Pantalone. And Vicentino is the son of Proteus and Julia Pantalone, and Francesca is the daughter of Lucio and Overdan Zani. So Vicentino is a knowledge sim and Francesca is a fortune sim, and those two aspirations tend to go very well together. And obviously they are Isabella's parents. And like Valentine and Sylvia Monty and their Cap peers or whatnot, these two also passed away as adults. So now we're going to continue on with Generation 2, but these branches are technically Generation 1 of their overall branches. But when we're looking at the bigger Monty picture, they are Generation 2. And these four branches, essentially the grandparents of Olivia and Hero, were born outside of Veronaville and migrated to Veronaville, and they all lived to be elders, unlike the other Generation 2 people that were born into Veronaville. So that is the main distinction here. So we are starting off with the Arlecchino family, which consists of Stefano Arlecchino and Quickly Arlecchino, where Stefano is a power sim and Quickly is or was a family sim. And from what I could grasp, the power aspiration was or is a combination of popularity and fortune. So those two mixed with family kind of makes the couples kind of compatible, but not the strongest in that regard. If I were to predict their ethnicity, I would assume that they are either from Italy or from an area that was colonized by Italy in the early 20th century or the turn of the century. So we're going to move on to Hero's other grandparents, which is Patrizio and Caterina Amante. So this is the Amante's family. And what's interesting is that this last name is derived from Latin, but I've seen other definitions that indicate that it's Spanish, though it could also be Italian. Anyways, Patrizio is a popularity sim and Caterina is a fortune sim, and these aspirations are kind of compatible. Patrizio clearly looks black, so I'm assuming he's a black man, and Caterina could also be mixed as well, but I find it interesting that they make it very clear that Hero, Monty, thus Beatrice and Benedick Monty have black sub-Saharan African lineage. And obviously this would have to be as a result of colonialism, whether from Spain or Italy in Africa. That's how I'm kind of reading this situation. Now we are moving on to Olivia's grandparents via the Dottore and the Brigella families. With the Dottoros, we have Del Dottore and Giaconetta Dottore, where Del Dottore is an art sim and Giaconetta Dottore is a romance sim, and these two aspirations are not compatible at all. So this could be a situation where they're either in an arranged marriage, a lavender marriage, an open marriage, or just a completely dysfunctional marriage. If I were to guess, they would obviously have Italian lineage, maybe some Libyan due to the colonialism that took place there. But Italian, definitely. Maybe some other admixture too. And then the final set of immigrants in the Monty timeline comes from the Brigellas, where we have Thurio Brigella and the Lucetta Brigella, where Thurio Brigella is a family sim and Lucetta Brigella is a knowledge sim, and these are two very compatible aspirations. So it's presumed that they had a very good, functional, compatible marriage. And I see them both coming from Italy right at the gate, especially because it does seem like they are much lighter than some of the others within this timeline. Yes, I'm looking at the family tree and they're definitely lighter than pretty much everyone else in this generation within the Monty branch. At this point, we are now getting into the third generation of the Monty clan. Of course, we have Patrizio and Isabella, who are major characters and living characters in the Veronaville timeline, and they are third generation within Veronaville. But you will see that the other four people from this generation were first born in their individual branches, and they would be the parents of some of the more important, narratively wise, important Monty family members in the overall Veronaville and Monty narrative. And they would also suffer from what I like to believe as the first generation born curse, as the other four died as adults. We are going to move on, or start off, with the Arlecchino branch with Trinculo Arlecchino and Maria Arlecchino, where Trinculo is the son of Stefano and Quickly Arlecchino, where Maria is the daughter of Patrizio and Caterina Amantes. So Trinculo Arlecchino is a family sim, and Maria Arlecchino is a fortune sim, where they have very compatible aspirations. So I'm assuming that they had a very good marriage, though they would die within adulthood. And honestly, it's kind of a shame that they, as well as their daughter, never got to live until adulthood and had early deaths. Now we are moving on to the Dottore branch, and they, as well as their daughter, have the unfortunate fate of dying early in adulthood, where we have Holofernes and Judith Dottore. Holofernes Dottore is a knowledge sim, and he's the son of Dal and Jaquinetta Dottore, where Judith Dottore is a power sim and is the daughter of Thurio and Lucetta Brigella. So, like I mentioned earlier, power is kind of a mixture of popularity and fortune, and I think the fortune element goes well with knowledge, so they would be compatible, but probably not the most compatible compared to some of the other couples that I have here. Now we are getting into Patrizio and Isabella Monty, who are the third generation within their family branches. Patrizio is the son of Sylvia and Valentine Monty, and Isabella is the daughter of Vicentino and Francesca Pantalone. So what we know about Patrizio is that he was friends with Concert and Contessa Cap, where he was friends and business partners with Concert to the point where they were best friends. They both worked in the business career together, and he was romantic with Contessa during a teenager, where both of those relationships ended up going to hell, essentially, and he got kicked out of the business career, where he would meet and marry Isabella after entering the culinary career. They have 3 children together, i.e. Bianca, Antonio, and Claudio, and they have a very happy, prosperous life together. So when the game opens up, he is about to die, essentially, and he is a family sim, which is a strike contrast to his father's aspiration. So, from what we get of his personality, is that he is neat, in between shy and outgoing, kind of lazy, kind of serious, and kind of grouchy. Oh, and he's also a retired cook, and obviously dealing with the loss of his son, both daughter-in-laws, grandchild and really hates the caps to the point where it's obsessive. Now we are going to move on to Isabella Monty, and just from the little that we get about her childhood and adolescence, she was kind of minding her own business and doing her own thing, where it wasn't until she met Patrizio while working in the culinary career where she really got involved in the drama, and she kind of took on his hatred for the Caps. So I'm pretty sure she developed her own reasons for hating them as the decades and the years went on. And it's clear that she's the real cook of the family, which we see through her skill set and some of the pictures in Veronaville. Anyways, obviously she marries Patrizio. They have a very successful culinary empire together. They have 3 children together and 4 grandchildren. So what's interesting is that when the game starts, she isn't in love with him. And she fell out of love with him, though that's usually something that is easily repairable since they are both very compatible aspiration-wise, since they are both family sims and they do have chemistry. Though I do find that to be a very interesting tidbit there, especially with it being so soon after Contessa's death, if the timeline is correct. Anyways, when it comes to her personality, she's kind of sloppy, kind of outgoing, in between lazy and active, in between serious and playful, and in between grouchy and nice. So she has a very balanced personality. And she, like her husband, retired from the culinary career at damn near the top. Now it is time to do Generation 4, and none of them are ancestral sims within the Monty, and they're all relevant to the main storylines of Veronaville, whether they are alive or not. And unfortunately, 60% of them are deceased as adults, but that may or may not have to do with the feud with the Caps. So there is a discrepancy when it comes to the ages of this generation, just like the Cap family. And of course, I'm referring to the 3 Monty children, and I'm going to get into that soon. So obviously I'm going to talk about the 3 Monty siblings in one section and then their partners or spouses on the second part. So the first confusion, or the main confusion about the Monty siblings from Generation 4 is their order of birth. There's some indication that Bianca Monty is the oldest, then Antonio Monty, then Claudio Monty is the youngest, which really doesn't make sense because Claudio, i.e. the youngest person supposedly, has the 2 oldest kids of the next generation with his kids. Then Antonio has the next oldest with his children, and then Bianca has no children, and it's kind of hinted that she recently left home. So that'd kind of be odd if she was the oldest and Claudio is the youngest. It would make sense if Claudio was the oldest, then Antonio, then Bianca, but you can interpret this in any other way. And especially if this household is a patriarchal one where they pass it down to their oldest son, Claudio being favored and then it going to his children really makes no sense. Anyways, we're going to go into each of them individually and learn more about them. And I am going to start with the living ones. So with Bianca, we do know that in the game, Antonia is older than her, so it kind of circumvents the supposed canon when it comes to their timeline. It talks about how she is friends with Kent, though she does have a romantic crush on him, and she wants to create her own path, pretty much, which is what I get from her. And she's looking for love. She wants to start her own family. Unlike her brother Antonia, she doesn't have a job. When it comes to her personality, she is kind of sloppy, in between outgoing and shy, kind of active, she's kind of serious, and kind of nice. And she's also a family sim, which she inherited from both of her parents. Now we are moving on to Antonio Monty, and no matter what, he is the middle child, i.e. the second child, so at least that's something that's consistent. He is a knowledge sim, which makes him stand out from damn near everyone else in his family, though he is a cook as an executive chef, and of course with there being a lot of cooks in the Monty family, they come from a long line of cooks, especially since it's kind of hinted that they run a restaurant. So he was married to hero Monty, though when you look at their aspirations, they really aren't compatible at all, as she's a popularity sim, and they had twins. It seemed like Antonio wasn't too involved in the mess or the drama up until his wife passed away, and he really wants to know what was the cause of it, and it's kind of hinted that he thinks one of the caps are it, and he is enemies with his fair share of caps. So when it comes to his personality, he is kind of neat, kind of shy, active, serious, and in between grouchy and nice. And now it is time to get into Claudio Monty, who was a sous chef before he passed away. It seemed like he lived his life trying to make his parents proud and kind of wanting to live through their legacy while also wanting his own family. And it seemed like he was struggling with reconciling his son's romance with his family's sworn enemy. What also makes him stand out is that he's a fortune sim, which I believe no one in his immediate family has that aspiration trait. So he, like his brother, worked in the restaurant. He was married to Olivia Monty, and they had two children together, i.e. Mercutio and Romeo, and they were about to have a third child before they both passed. Oh, technically, all three of them passed away. When it comes to his personality, he's neat, in between shy and outgoing, active, serious, and grouchy. We are now going to move on to the wives of Antonio and Claudio, and we're going to start off with Olivia Monty, who's the daughter of Holofernes and Judith de Toro. We don't know a whole lot about her outside of the fact that she's a family sim. She obviously married Claudio, and they had two children, Mercutio and Romeo Monty. Judging from her family photos and the fact that there's a dead child, or a dead infant, really, or an embryo, I guess, and her bio mentioning that her next pregnancy will push her over the edge, it's clear that she passed away due to complications of her third pregnancy, and it's unfortunate that she passed away as an adult, just like her parents did. When it comes to her personality, she's sloppy, outgoing, kind of lazy, kind of serious, and kind of nice. I also forgot to mention that she's a family sim, and family sims tend to go well with fortune sims when it comes to the chemistry factor. Now we're going to move on to Hiro Monty, who's the daughter of Trinculo and Maria Olercino, and unfortunately she does not have a bio, so we really don't know a whole lot about her. Obviously, she marries Antonio Monty, and she's a popularity sim, which tends to not have strong chemistry with knowledge sims, so it really has me wondering what their marriage was like. They did end up having twins in Beatrice and Benedick Monty, and she passed away when they were toddlers. But no one knows how she passed away, as her grave is not found anywhere in Veronaville, though it's hinted through a few of the bios that she might have been a casualty of the Cap and Monty feud. When it comes to her personality, she's in between sloppy and neat. She's outgoing, she's kind of active, she's serious and grouchy, and unfortunately for her, she also passed away as an adult, just like her parents did. Now we are finally at Generation 5 of the Monty family, and there's not much to say about them since 1, they're minors, and 2, there's not many of them compared to the Generation 5 Cap people. So let's not waste much time, and let's get right to it. Mercutio Monty is the oldest child of Olivia and Claudio Monty, and his bio mentions that he is good-natured and warm, and is also the jokester of the family. And then, will that's kind of cool the tension within his feuding, with his family. So he's huge enemies with Tybalt Cap because of the feud. He also doesn't really like Juliet much. He's friends with Puxemogene, though that may change due to them both liking Hermia. And Mercutio is also friends with Miranda, who has an unrequited crush on him. So it seems like he isn't the favorite one since he's kind of less than intelligent and he's working as a drive-through clerk. Though when you open up the family, he missed a day of work. He is a popularity sim, so he wants to be liked. And when it comes to his personality, he's sloppy, outgoing, lazy, playful, and in between grouchy and nice. Romeo Monty is the second child of Claudio and Olivia Monty, and it's clear that he is the favorite one in his family. And there's mention of him being naturally charismatic and handsome, and he's on his way to being a heartbreaker. There's a lot of focus on his relationship with Juliet Cap, or their budding relationship, but they're extremely incompatible, since she's a family sim and he's a romance sim. He is smarter than his brother as he does well in school, and he is a dishwasher. And like I mentioned, he's a romance sim, so commitment is not a good thing for him. And it's not something that he desires for whatsoever. He does not get along with Tybalt at all, which obviously has partially to do with the relationship with Juliet and due to the family feuding between the two. So his personality is sloppy, kind of outgoing, in between active and lazy, in between playful and serious, and kind of nice. So he has a very balanced personality. There's not much to say about the twins because they're obviously children. They lost their mother when they were toddlers, so they had to deal with that. Actually, no, they might have been children when they lost her. Sorry, I, I was incorrect. They lost Hero as soon as they became children. Anyways, it seems like Beatrice is the older and feistier one compared to the two. And looking at her personality, she's sloppy, shy, active, serious, and nice. Where Benedick is sloppy, shy, active, kind of playful, and kind of nice. Alrighty, so that concludes my Monty family recap slash analysis video. Obviously, I'm going to do the Summer Dream one, which won't take that long since there's not much to discuss. And then I'm going to put together a Veronaville timeline of all the generations of all the families and all the members. I still have some of the screenshots that I made for my old video that I have since deleted, so that won't take too long. And then hopefully I'll be able to do this for Strangetown and Pleasant View and some of the other pre-made sim neighborhoods. Thank you all for watching and I'll be back soon. Take care!